Hey, guys and dolls, it's Sleepy Reader. A little shaky cam 3-in-1 this time around. I've got some comic book thoughts for you on the 4 comics I read today, and I've got some shots around the neighborhood, some shaky cameras walking down the street, and I'm going to show you at the end my haul from my comic book shop today. Today is still Wednesday for me. By the time you see this, it'll be at least Thursday, but my comic book haul from my weekly Wednesday visit to the comic book shop. So the first thing I read was this quite good comic called Unholy Grail. I'm not sure if I'd recommend it to someone who's not particularly obsessed by Arthurian legend. I've mentioned other times about this book and how it, is kind of a twist on things with Merlin actually being this demon from hell who took the place of the original magician Merlin, and how he's kind of twisting the Arthurian stories. And in this issue, we see more of the twists, and the story goes off in a direction that I'm at least not ever familiar, any version of the Camelot story working out this way, where Guinevere and Lancelot go off, escape, and have a baby. The art's pretty good, but you kind of sense, maybe I'm just kind of paranoid about the Aftershock comics where only the writer has the copyright and the artist is more a hired hand. But I feel like this artist is very good, but he maybe could have done even better or committed more to each page if he had more of a stake in it. I could be wrong. And the coloring is actually very wonderful. Let me look at who's the colorist. Maria Santiola. I would say, and it might be partially because of the artist's lack of total commitment here, that the story feels like it skips about in almost a little bit of a herky-jerky way. A lot happens in this issue, and at times it feels a little bit of a disconcerting jump, like shouldn't there have been more build up to these scenes or something. Maybe just a little more maybe Colin Bunn is being a little lazy, and if he just put in a little more narration or dialogue to ease us from one scene to the other, or just to give us a little more per scene somehow. But that's being picky. I enjoyed reading this a lot. I'm happy to be reading it. Although, Aftershock gives you 20 pages for your $4, the length of, I guess, a Marvel or DC comic. But I feel like they could give us a little bit more. It seems to me like most indie comics give you 22 or 24 pages or sometimes even more. But so if I were on more of a budget, I would definitely wait on these Aftershock comics and read them in trade. And it might make a better read in trade, I'm not sure. But at the moment I can afford it, so I'm going to keep buying it in singles. The next comic I read is probably the comic I enjoyed the most this week. Not this week, today, this reading of comics. It might be up there with this week. I can't really sit back and think about everything I've read this week, but it was Curse Words by Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. And I guess they celebrated, this is issue 10, and they've done 10 issues in a year, and so they made a big celebration about that at the back, and I think it is quite an achievement because although like a lot of comics out right now, it's a fantasy comic, it's proving to really have its own voice and its own sense of humor. And you'll see in a few minutes or a few seconds when we see the comic, it even has its own unique color palette, which is a lot of fun. Its own style of page layouts and everything. And this issue brings a lot of funny moments, pleasing twists and turns, at least three good sort of twists on the existing plot that I did not really see coming and that I enjoyed a lot. And just the dialogue is really good. The art still feels to me like it's a little sloppy in places, but Not so much that it really hurts the story or anything, or maybe the bright colors make up for it for me. Love these double-page spreads, and I love I don't know if you just saw there where in that double-page spread he says to the woman who's attacking him, but this isn't your story. It's just such a playful book. It's a ton of fun. I actually haven't counted how many pages there are in it. I'm going to miss this character with the hole in her body, and I like that she's riding on a Pegasus, or a unicorn Pegasus. So my daughter, who loves to watch My Little Pony, what does she call those? Pegacorns? Unicis? No, I can't remember her term for a Pegasus unicorn. Unfortunately, she would be too disturbed. She's easily disturbed, too disturbed by the hole in the woman's torso and other things like that. So yeah, an excellent comic book. So we got out of work early today, or we shut down the office early. And that reminds me, there was one thing I told my manager I would check on at home, just one extra email from a client. Dang, I have to do that tomorrow on Thanksgiving, which it is. For some of you, it may be Thanksgiving right now. A happy Thanksgiving if you are celebrating Thanksgiving, if you're in the United States of America. But otherwise, hopefully you're just having a good day. So we closed the office early. I went to the gym and worked out there for maybe the first time in 3 or 4 weeks, because I pulled some muscles in my stomach a while ago. But not at the gym, slipping down some stairs at my house. But finally my stomach muscles were feeling better, so I went to the gym. And then after the gym, I treated myself a little bit and went to Baja Fresh. You might have seen the chips and guacamole there. And I had some shrimp tacos. But if I hadn't had the chips, it would have been a pretty healthy meal. But still probably better than going to McDonald's or something. So I'll tell myself. And so I read some comics there, and then when I got home after spending some time with my family, I walked over to the comic book store, picked up some comics, and then kind of took a long meandering walk through my neighborhood, in which I shot a few short clips, which you're seeing here. Right now I'm walking through a park that's not too far from my house that used to be a school but isn't anymore. I think I'm trying to get a picture of the homeless in there who hang out on the baseball field, unfortunately. But I don't think you can see them at that distance. So picked up my comic books, and I walked back home and eventually read a few more comics. So you'll be seeing Aquaman and Superman that I read at home on my lap while my daughter was watching My Little Pony. She's utterly obsessed with My Little Pony now. And I suppose 9-year-olds some of them are too old for My Little Pony, but not my daughter. And turns out there's like 170 episodes of My Little Pony. This Aquaman still has the great art. It's kind of a political revolution fantasy type story, all underwater. It's kind of nice to see it not so connected with the Justice League and all of that stuff. You know, it's nice to take a break from that. I love the art. I think the weakest part, though, is kind of the action, especially action with Aquaman. Aquaman seems, maybe it's just my imagination, but it feels like he's least comfortable drawing Aquaman. You can see here, we're talking about Stefan Sajak. He draws women wonderfully. It would be great if they put him on Wonder Woman, I think. Or, I don't know, Supergirl even. But anyway, he's very good for all this underwater magic empire intrigue. But I'm a little disappointed. I'm still enjoying this, but I'm a little disappointed that it's just kind of this Aquaman leading what seems to be kind of a straightforward revolution now is what it's leading up to. I liked the idea that Aquaman had decided he wasn't worthy to be king. People didn't want him to be king, so why should he be king? And he has a good point there. But now the guy that the people did chose to be the king is proving to be a total wacko. I mean, we knew he was pretty wacko anyway. But now he's obviously someone to be gotten rid of. I guess he was all along. But so it seems inevitable that eventually they will declare him king again. I guess I'm just too much of an old, jaded reader. But still, one of the more high-quality Big Two books. Perhaps, for my tastes, perhaps amongst the very best artists working at DC.
One's got a bit on the back of my leg.
And then I read Superman, which has Superboy on the cover. We're still in Apocalypse. I'm loving exploring Apocalypse more. Not that any of this jibes at all with what's happening in Mr. Miracle. But putting that aside, it's really cool. The appearance of the Hunger Dogs and Superboy developing a relationship with them is really cool and cute, but not too cute. For me, Tomasi and Gleason, like back when they handled Damian Robin, they did this too. They combine the cute child stuff and the pet stuff in such a way that it's not very saccharine at all, and it works, but it still has a sentimental oomph to it. And we had a lot of fun stuff between Luthor and Superman, although I feel like I missed an issue or something that explained more what Luthor is up to. That part seems to have been skipped over rather quickly. The weakest part of this issue, though, it was a very good issue. I enjoyed it a lot. It was Imperious Lex Part 3, World of Flame, is the art. There's 3 artists listed, and the art feels kind of inconsistent and kind of rushed, which is a shame because I'd really like to see top-notch artists putting their all into drawing Apocalypse. I mean, one of the most exciting visual places in all of the lore of comic books. And it's kind of just a desert or a blank space in the background. I mean, every once in a while we get some glimpses of it, and some of the characters seem kind of bland. Even what's his name, the son of Darkseid. And in this issue, Granny Goodness, at least one of the artists is not trying Granny Goodness and her female Furies that impressively. I feel like in some panels they looked good, and some they didn't. But Kalibak is the one I'm talking about, who's usually kind of this crazy-looking guy. He just looks like kind of an over-muscled, bearded warrior here, but nothing beyond that. I'm used to him not looking very human at all. But there's other times where the drawing's really cool. There's this big battle scene. Have I gotten to it yet in the video? I'm looking more at the comic book than I'm looking at what you're seeing. I think it's still coming up. So anyway, Tomasi has gone to Apocalypse before with great effect in Batman and Robin, when he went to Apocalypse to retrieve. When Batman fought toe to toe with Darkseid to retrieve Damian's body. So this is kind of a callback to that. But that was drawn by Gleason, and I wish this was drawn by Gleason. But anyway, it's still got some really cool stuff. And if you can pick up the issues of Imperious Lex, I would, just if you're a fan of the whole idea of going to Apocalypse. And we've had one issue featuring Lois, one issue featuring Superman, and one issue now featuring Superboy. I mean, they're all in each issue, but the focus is more on one or the other. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, there's Kalibak. I just don't like. He's kind of almost fuzzy looking, not in sharp focus. And there's the drawing I don't like of the female Furies very much. And there's Lois there amongst them. But then that's the really cool battle scene. So I think that's a different artist. Maybe we're getting to the point, especially in Superman with all these fill-in issues and some weaker issues that have been around, where it just would be better if it were a monthly book. Aquaman seems to do well as a twice a month book. Batman seems to do fairly well as a twice a month book, I guess. They have the artist rotations figured out quite well. And I do like getting books twice a month, but it just doesn't seem to be working out for Superman. Also do like getting the books for $2.99 and not $3.99. And I guess only the twice a month books are that cheap. So in all this wandering around, most of what you're seeing is just back streets where people live, the dirty back streets of Southeast Portland. But here we're crossing the street of one of the main streets, Division Street, where I used to live. Actually, I used to live right on Division Street, not on these blocks, but about 6 blocks down from here. That was the house that I recently sold, which the proceeds of which will help contribute a few $100s to printing that fanzine I talked about. Probably print it. I'll talk about that more soon. These orange bikes you're seeing are bikes for rent, which is a new thing in Portland. I think it's been going on for about 2 years now. I think they were donated by Nike, or at least in part. But I think it's mostly a thing for tourists. So in areas that have suddenly, like this one, become places that tourists are told to come to when they visit Portland, you see people riding around on these orange bikes. The idea supposedly is regular inhabitants of Portland will use those orange bikes instead of their cars, but I don't think very many people do that. So when I was at my comic book store, it turns out my comic book store is going to have a big back issue sale starting on Friday, for Black Friday. And so I kind of should have spent less money, but I bought this trade, a humanoids trade called Orion's Outcasts. It just looked pretty cool to me. And I also picked up, I'm not even sure what it's called. Is that Now? It's a new magazine from Fantagraphics, but the comic book shop had it amongst the books. It looks like a book. But I have to say that's I like getting an anthology, but that cover with the woman sticking her tongue out and the pill on it, it's just a really unappealing, ugly cover. If I didn't realize it was that anthology, I wouldn't have picked it up based on that cover alone. I would have just thought it was a book full of ugly, unpleasant art, no matter how well rendered. It's interesting, a lot of these humanoid books have a similar palette to that, color palette, and this one seems to be no exception. So, and then here's all the regular comics I picked up from my pull. Stuff that I didn't even remember was there in some cases. Sherlock Frankenstein, looking forward to the second issue of that. I forgot I put Doppelganger from Alterna Press. It sounded cool to me. I think it's a 4-issue thing. And Amazing Age, is this the second to last issue of that? That's been a pretty good series. Commandy, I'm kind of psyched because it's Simonson doing the art. And Savage Dragon, I've just really been enjoying a lot since I started picking it up, even though it has its goofy side. Really like the art, and it's just so far been very fun to read. So I'm looking forward to this issue. And I forgot about Lilith Dark. Hellblazer. This time written by Richard Kadri, so we'll see. But the art still is kind of what I think of as this ugly, scratchy art. And there's a horrible font that a lot of DC Comics have been using lately. Detective, I'm behind on reading that. So I think I have about 3 or 4 issues of Detective. Exo Man of War. It looks like he's crucified on a bunch of grapes or something. But I'm looking forward to that a lot. And Doom Patrol, also looking forward to that a lot. It feels like it's been a while since the last Doom Patrol. I think there was one issue with the regular creative group, but it feels like that was a couple months ago. And then my comic book shop got me The Beautiful Death, which apparently I put on my pull back in July, but this is the first issue they got me, and it was number 3. I had kind of an awkward conversation about that with my comic book guy. And not on my pull, but I picked up Moon Girl because I had been getting that in the mail through a mail subscription from Marvel, but that has ended for the moment. I have renewed it, but I think I won't be getting this issue, and I wanted to see it. It ties in with the Fantastic Four. And I also picked up #1 of Demon Hell on Earth, which I think is a 6-issue series. I was just curious to see what that would be like. Unless I fall madly in love with it, I probably won't. I'm getting so many comics, I probably won't add it to my pull, but who knows? Maybe it'll win me over. It's got a writer I've never heard of. I can't see what his name is right now. So that was my pull. Plenty to read. I don't know if this long Thanksgiving weekend will give me plenty of time to read or not. We'll see. Thanks a lot for stopping by.